Okay.
I didn't. I would have.
Okay, everybody, you ready to roll?
That's cute. Let's go. You're mean.
I'd like to call the USD 489 school board meeting to order for April 11th, 2022. We have all of our board members here tonight. One is on Zoom, but we have all the board members. Tammy Wilbrock will be zooming in, so Jess will have her votes, and Chris over here as we move through the meeting. So we have all the board members in attendance tonight. I would like to welcome the crowd. We have a good crowd here tonight, so welcome. I'm glad you're here at our board meeting. At this time, I would like to have a motion for approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'd like to add a couple of adjustments or corrections on the agenda. One is 6.2. I'm requesting to remove the word approval on the end of that. We don't do that on any of our other action items. I just don't think it's appropriate for us to be told or have that as a insinuation that we're going to vote that way.
Okay, but it's under action for discussion.
Right.
Which means we can discuss it without approving it.
I understand that, but it's just unusual that you put that on the agenda item, the way to vote. So I just thought it should be taken off. The other item, I guess I move that we add discussion of administration contracts, benefits, and salary.
Alan, I know you had requested 3 items to be put on the agenda. 2 of the items are on the agenda tonight. The discussion on the administrative contracts will be on a meeting, but it is scheduled to be closer to the time we're looking at finalizing administrator contracts. So do you want to make a motion to add that as an agenda item?
Well, if we're discussing it, are we discussing that? Or I'm just saying that in the past, we find out information we don't seem like we were prepared. There might be items or things that we'd like to request for information prior to finding out the day that we approve the contract. So I thought this would be proactive to start that discussion, and finding out information from the other board members, and I'd like to see on that. So when do you see that agenda item will be on the agenda?
I don't know the exact date, but I know we're just starting negotiation with teachers this week, and we'll go through that whole process before we look at contracts and for certified and classified.
I didn't see in the information, is there a number of, you said I had 2 items, is there a limit to the number of requests?
No, I was just, you'd sent me, or Tammy, 3 different items, and I was in on the discussion, and we put 2 of them on, and since it was not time sensitive, we have a lengthy agenda, we decided that it would be better off at a further meeting.
Okay, well, we can move that on to another, for a future meeting, that'd be great.
Okay.
So I did request that we remove that one word off of that, because it's saying that we're going to go ahead and approve that item when we haven't discussed it yet. I'm just requesting, I just feel that should be removed from the...
Okay.
So I move that item be removed, because I don't think we should have the outcome of a certain agenda item on the agenda. Because we don't have it on any of the other ones that we're discussing either.
I have to take issue with that. We have approval of the consent agenda. We have the word approval. We have approval of the agenda on that. These are all items that are up for discussion, and we can make the motion to approve or reject at that point, but we wouldn't make a motion to approve, to reject a bid we would make a motion to approve a bid and then vote whether or not to do so.
We haven't done that in the past. We don't have it on item 6, the
Okay.
action discussion.
I'm going to ask Mr. Jeter to give me a little input here on 6.2, driver's education car bid approval. That's under action/discussion item. We've had a board member request to remove the wordage of approval on it. How do I,
Is that part of your overall discussion on approving the agenda?
approving the agenda?
However the board wants to vote?
Okay.
Mr.
Okay.
President, I move we remove that word approval and not to have items like that
Okay,
on our agenda request.
do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll have a vote. The motion is to remove the wordage of approval on 6.2, driver's education car bid. If you're in favor of Alan's motion, please vote aye at this time.
Aye.
Aye.
If you're against, vote nay.
Nay.
Jess, where are we at since we can't hear Tammy?
And I voted yes.
Yes? Okay, so the approval will be stricken off of that motion as part of the agenda?
I think it was approved? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
And so again, do we have a motion to approve the agenda with this change?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the agenda, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against, nay. Approved, 7-0. Okay, one of the opportunities that we do before we move on to the agenda is talk about the mission of 489. And I want to take a little bit of time here. It's up here on our sign just for the audience. Our mission of USD 49 is to provide a quality learning experience for every student in every classroom every day. That's what our board meetings are. That's our mission. And the vision of the board, we have high student achievement, highly effective staff, effective and positive communications, effective management of resources. Those are the things that we are considering as we go through the school board meetings each time. Okay, next on the agenda is recognitions, USD 49 Student Spotlight.
No.
No, we need the consent.
Oh, it's the consent agenda, excuse me.
You'll need to refresh to get to the adjustment to the agenda.
Okay, you will need to refresh on that. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. President?
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, vote aye.
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 All against, nay. 7-0. 7-0 on the approval of the consent agenda. Now we're moving down to the USD 49 student spotlights.
Okay, super. It's always a great time to recognize the students. We're going to start with the Pace High Chess Club, back-to-back 5A state champs.
Yes, sir.
Yay.
Aaron was our sponsor and she has currently left our organization, is now working in Sterling, but she is back for this recognition tonight.
I couldn't miss the recognition of my kids. This program started 4 years ago, and since then, the kids have just taken off and done amazing. Our first year, I had no idea what a tournament schedule or tournament competition chess looked like, but we kind of jumped in, and with a lot of leadership from the TMP chess program as well. Randy Bull was a huge advocate of me getting this started at Hayes High, and him and I worked very, very closely over the last 4 years, getting it to where it is. But the first year, we took 6th overall and took 2nd in the 5A division. That was our first year of this program. The second year is the year that should not be named. And then last year, we came back and got 5th overall and took 1st in the 5A. And now this last year, we did 3rd overall and again held our title as 1st in the 5A division. Now we lost. We had a tiebreaker for 2nd going into the first round of the tiebreaker, which is not normally done at state chess. Normally it's very concise. You know who gets 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. But we tied for 2nd in Blue Valley and lost by half a point in the tiebreaker. And the first place was Lawrence High School, and that was a half a point as well. So these kids are phenomenal. I have nothing to do with the success of the program other than my passion to put it forward. I am glad that even with me stepping down and moving on to this new position, that the chess program will continue to thrive. I'm hoping that a good budget can be put in place for next year to make sure that these kids can go forward and don't have to put any money into it and just can continue with this passion in the program, because I think it's very beneficial for these high schoolers. We had the top 50 at state medal, and we had 4 that walked away with a medal at state. Aiden Burton got 37th. He is a freshman this year. He's a very talented player. Jesus Contreras, he got 32nd. He is a senior this year. Staten Clark, who is here, he got 31st, and he is a junior, so he's going to come back with a passion next year as well. He's going to take some names. And then Noah Bruggeman got 6th in the K-12 division. Now Noah has been playing for a very long time, and he actually went on to the Nationals in Memphis this last weekend and took 11th overall in the K-12 division. So that is absolutely something that needs to be recognized. I am just grateful that I got to get this program up and running, and thank you guys for your support and helping this continue. So, thank you.
Yeah.
So Aaron, can we have you stand up here with the chest?
Yeah, I don't got all of them.
Those are the ones that are here.
Ones that are here.
Face me and we'll snap a pic. And maybe you guys can introduce yourselves too. Yes. Just smile.
I wasn't that good.
All right. All right. 1, 2, 3. Got it. Thank you. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you
You bet. Thanks, sir. Thanks for coming.
See you, Aaron. Take care. Peace. Good to see you.
Okay, also, we want to recognize our Hayes High wrestlers. They have had an equally successful season. This year, the Hayes High girls wrestling team, they qualified 4 girls for state: Sarah Zimmerman, Addison Audie, Katie Gutierrez, and Lexi Burton. And overall, as a team, they placed 2nd. Sarah Zimmerman was a state runner-up, and Lexi Burton finished 6th. Sarah Zimmerman became a 3-time state placer. It's the only 3rd official girls wrestling season, and it's the first year that Hayes High has had multiple girls place at state. The boys wrestling team qualified 8 to state tournament: Elijah McCullough, Braden Hines, Cyrus Biner, Harley Zimmerman, Aaron Weigel, Dalton Dale, Gavin Myers, and Gavin Nutty. This is the most Qualifiers in 10 years for Hayes High School. 2 wrestlers made the state finals, with Gavin Myers finishing as an undefeated 37-0 state champion, the only 5A wrestler to be undefeated this year, and Harley Zimmerman finished as a state runner-up. During the course of the season, the boys team finished as the Topeka Seaman Duels champion, Bob Kuhn Prairie Classic Team champions, the Russell Tournament champions, as well as placing 4th in the Colby Duels. Coach Keith Mader is here with a few of the boys, and come on up and you can say a few words about your team. I said it all. You said it to me, so.
No, yeah, definitely. Come on up. Our girls aren't here tonight. They're in other sports, as long with most of the other guys that didn't make it with their other activities and things. Incredibly hardworking group. Saw a lot of success this year, which was great to see. And obviously, it's always great to have some state finalists and get a state champion, especially one that's undefeated. And we've got some wrestlers going on in college even to pursue more wrestling as they go. So it was a great year, a lot of fun, and as a still fresh coach, it was an amazing year for me to start out with.
Kevin sure makes it look small. Got big kids.
Great, thank you guys.
All right, thank you.
Board meetings, right?
Yeah, past the first. Yeah, only went, 2 matches past the first period. It was amazing. Yeah, amazing.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, is that all of our spotlights for
That's all the
tonight?
recognitions for the evening.
Great. At this time, we're at 4.1 on our agenda, which is public comment. Do I have anyone in the audience that would like to address the board tonight? Seeing no one, I will not read any further on public comment. We will move to the superintendent's report.
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick update on the bond. We got a lot of stuff going on, some great stuff. We have been out having some school information meetings. We've had 2 meetings already at Lincoln and at Roosevelt. We have some meetings scheduled this week as well as next week at our other schools. Invitations are being sent out to parents, just an opportunity to come and ask questions. We've got a lot of, I don't know if any of you have been in the schools, but we have a lot of the kiosks out and about, the big boards with the pictures. Those are in all of our schools, and we're trying to get those around to any events as well, just so any patron who comes into any of our activities or events are seeing those big kiosk boards, and hopefully starting some conversations. Having a lot of organizations that we're also visiting with that are upcoming. We're having informational meetings with Rotary, Kiwanis, also Chamber Chat. If board members are interested in attending Chamber Chat, that's April 22nd, 9 o'clock, and it'll be here in the boardroom. And once again, just another opportunity to talk about the bond. We'll have a lot of yard signs that you've probably been seeing pop up. Our Vote Yes committee has been really instrumental in getting those out. A lot of work there. Big signs are out. Some digital boards have information. We've got, I don't know if you're paying attention, but the Tuesdays tidbit that Chrissy Crow, our public relations and community outreach, has been putting out. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be looking for that tidbit on just the bond and the investment with the increase in property valuations and how that is sometimes not such you can look at it different ways. There's been some great articles at Hayes Post. Christina Janney has written some great informational articles about our school facilities and part of the bond. We've also had a lot of testimonials in opinions written in the Hayes Post have been very supportive. Some radio ads are out there, and those are supported by our Vote Yes committee. So lots of great things going on with the bond as we continue to push forward. I think, what was the day total today? What was the total today of days?
14 days till April 25th.
14 days, yeah, David sends out that email with the number of days, 14 days till or start of early voting. It's coming fast. Registration ends April 19th, so that's 8 days. So lots of stuff going on. We did meet this morning, talked a little bit about our lunch prices for next year. Chris and Jessica Yonker and myself met to review that, and just so everyone understands, we have not paid lunches for the past year, and that will be ending. So we'll be having lunches. We'll ask to pay lunches next year. So that's going to be a little bit of a change, but just so everyone knows, we'll be keeping lunch prices the same. We don't anticipate raising that. Now, please understand, the cost for lunches for us to produce a lunch has gone up. But we feel like because of some of the carryover that we have in our lunch program, due to the year of where we got reimbursed at a higher rate, we'll utilize a little of that carryover to eat the cost, so to speak, as we can protect our families. Although it will seem like a bigger cost because they will be asked to pay next year. So, and just so you're aware that the first negotiations have been set. That is coming up on Wednesday, 3:45 to 5:45, and it'll be here in the boardroom.
And Ron, to go along with the lunch prices, we will, since it was pretty well discontinued last year, we will still be having the reduced, the full price lunches.
Yes, we'll still offer, if you qualify for the free or reduced, those qualifications will still be applicable.
And I think we've always mailed that out to everybody in the district.
That information will come, right at enrollment.
Is there a federal subsidization then for that? So if you qualify for reduced or free?
Yeah, we'll get
reimbursed?
Yeah, we get reimbursed, yeah. There's a different rate for free and a different rate for reduced.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson, the notice letters for negotiations was that the 31st that they went out and we received it?
Yeah.
Could we get a copy of those two?
I sent you a copy. You have it.
Of both of them?
Yeah, I believe so. Maybe not.
I didn't see it, so that,
Yeah.
did you?
I can send it again. Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, is that all?
Yeah.
All right, any discussion, any questions for Ron? Okay, if not, we'll move to our action and discussion items. 6.1, cybersecurity consult services, Treetop Security.
Yeah, this is just, we've invited Dallas Hazelhorst, with our cybersecurity event that the district dealt with. We have been working with Dallas, and as we continue going forward in attempts to just build up our systems, so to improve them, I invited Dallas to come in and visit with the board and kind of talk a little bit about his services and what he can be offering. So I'll let you take it away, Dallas.
I do have some flyers if you would like them.
Yeah, if you just want to hear, we'll pick them up after the meeting. Thank you.
Be a test later, I'm afraid.
I'll test you on it.
Yes, but
How's that?
Well, I guess what questions do you have? So obviously, we came into this situation not in a good place. Obviously, a lot going on with the incident, cyber attack. So we've helped kind of all along the way as far as making decisions, shoring up some of the defenses, but also just from an IT perspective, some of the things that you should be doing from an IT perspective to try and help some of the security of the system. what I always tell people is that you can have two very similar purchases of, say, networking equipment, and you can have one that's implemented perfectly fine, but not very secure, and you have another one that's perfectly fine and also secure. So, you start thinking about that, and cybersecurity and just security in general really becomes kind of commonplace in every single decision, every single thing that you do from an IT perspective even. So, we've made some significant strides. It's probably, I've told them, they probably get sick of me talking, but I've told them that it's probably the most significant changes I've seen security-wise in a couple of months' time. Obviously, there was a lot of urgency to it, which is not ever easy to deal with, but there was a lot of things going on, and they pretty well handled it as best as possible, whether that was relaying information as best we could, trying to get some training out, trying to make some purchases that this is the greatest need here, this isn't such a great need right now, but we're going to need it here in a couple months. So just a lot of decisions to be made, and I personally want to commend, the IT team at Hayes High, as well as all the administration, as well as all the faculty, staff, students, everybody that's been dealing with it. This is, there's a lot of school districts that go out of, not out of business, but definitely shut down for a few weeks. A lot of businesses shut down for a few weeks or more. They've pretty well handled it in stride, and it's had minimal impact, especially on the day-to-day learning experience with PowerSchool and some of those things out in the cloud.
So in the future, is that something with you that we'll probably avoid most of at downtime?
Yeah, no, fantastic question. So the whole idea is that you never truly are 100% secure. If you're 100% secure, you probably shut your systems off. So really it comes down to, what are you doing? Well, start knocking off the highs and the criticals is what we would call them. You start knocking some of those out. Also do some continuous security monitoring, and that's kind of the piece where my services, our services also come in. You do that continuous security monitoring, so once you put something in place, now you have something actually monitoring it to make sure it's not an issue in the future, and if it is, you have an alert. You're monitoring that particular piece. So you just continue knocking those out, and eventually you get to a more secure state. The one thing that I can say is, like I said, you're never 100% secure. A lot of times it's, the old adage about, I don't have to be faster than the bear, I have to be faster than you. In a lot of ways, that's even true in cybersecurity. If you want to be, not get hit, you probably just have to be a little bit faster, a little bit better, a little bit stronger than the school district next door. That's really what it comes down to. So, is an attacker going to come knocking on your door? Are they going to see what you have in place and go, yeah, you know what, this isn't worth it. There's some other low-hanging fruit over here that I'm going to go get. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it sure does.
The 400-hour estimate, is that like a yearly estimate, or is that from now to the future?
Estimate is what we kind of put together based on where we're at right now, and then looking at next year, what it might be over the course of the year.
And that's a max, right? Is that?
Yeah, up to that.
Now, is that going to come out of the technology budget, or where's it budgeted from?
It's all out of
General?
Yeah, all out of general fund.
Austin, I got a couple questions. So our security system, as of now, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would we be?
So I'll answer your question, but I'll take a step back in the sense that, one of the first things that I got asked was, where do you think we are today? And a lot of people said, that means you're not very secure or anything else. I've walked into, I don't know if it's in the tens of thousands, but I walked into the thousands of businesses, small businesses especially, whether that's hospitals, energy companies, you name it. And I can tell you your network did not look much different than anyone else at that point. It's just you happen to get attacked. So that's really what it comes down to. From where, scale of 1 to 10, where are you at now? middle of the road, probably a little bit better. Still a lot to do, but keep in mind that security in general, you can go back and you can make all of these changes, but they become financially prohibitive to do that. To go back and fix something that is working perfectly fine just because there's this much risk to it is probably a career-ending event, honestly. So what you do is instead you look at things, you look at your opportunities. So for instance, the network right now is going through a full replacement. So of course, one of the things that we looked at, and keep in mind a network is generally a 5 to 8 year infrastructure type item. So right now is the opportune time to look at that and really assess, well, are we doing everything that we should be doing? Well, no, you could almost, throw another network segment in here and call it IoT devices, and that way they're 100% segmented from all the other stuff over here, and the students are over here, and, you start making some of those decisions, and that goes a long ways towards improving cybersecurity. Does that answer your question?
Sure. So how much further can we improve?
Long ways.
Long ways.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, you're already a little bit ahead of the pack, in my opinion, just with some of the things that we've already done. But there's a long ways. I mean, keep in mind, you have multi-million-dollar, multi-billion-dollar companies. I mean, Microsoft, Okta, the Department of Defense, those people are spending some serious coin on cybersecurity, and guess what? They get hacked. In fact, Microsoft just got hacked here in the last few weeks, last month, by, they thought it was a nation-state actors. Turns out it was a group of 16 and 17-year-olds out of the UK. So, what are you doing? And that goes back to the, at some point you determine that, this really isn't worth it. It's a risk that we're willing to take. Do we have things that if that goes through, are we able to recover from it? And so you start shifting some of those things, and then it really comes down to, and every business is different. A hospital, for instance, might have a much less risk appetite than, say, a school district, or, an energy company is going to be a lot less, they're going to be much more risk adverse than a school district. So at that point, you go back to, the board, and also some of the administration and say, well, what do you think? What's your take on this? And let them make the decision, because at a certain point, it becomes a 50-50 decision, and I'll be the first one to tell you, hey, it's up to you. I'll give you the pros and the cons, but ultimately, what's it worth to you? It's the reason why, gambling is an industry. What's worth, $10 to me might be, $1,000 to Kurt. Or probably vice versa, right, Kurt? But, yeah, no, it's just what your risk appetite is. That's really what it comes down to. And we've gone, even with the administration, I can tell you they've probably heard more acronyms and jargon. I've tried explaining those as best we can. But, just to explain that and let them ultimately make some of those decisions. And at the end of the day, cybersecurity is becoming a part of every business. I don't care how fast you run from it, it isn't going anywhere. So, the big thing to me is making sure that they're educated on it to where the next time we have a question, or the next time we need something, and I say, hey, Chris, we'd really like to look at a patch management solution. Chris isn't going, whoa, stop. I don't even know what that means. He probably didn't a few weeks ago, a few months ago, but now he does. So that's part of that process, is educating, making sure that the folks that are making those decisions understand exactly what the heck you're trying to do.
So companies that have used your services, because we know, like you just said, that there's no 100%, there's no way to stop it. Any of them that you can give us an example where you've helped mitigate their loss or helped them mitigate what their damage to their company or anything?
Yeah, so trying to prove a false negative is a lesson in futility. Yeah. I can tell you I've worked with some large hospitals. Actually, a very large hospital system, probably 40-some clinics. And one of the things that came up is we were going through a whole insurance process, and this is probably 10 years ago roughly, and we were doing a full rollout of brand new Windows 7 at the time, if that tells you how long ago this was. But Windows XP support was actually running out. We were going to Windows 7. Long story short, there's an opportunity to do data encryption on the devices themselves. It's called BitLocker. And so the advice, my advice at the time was, hey, you would be crazy not to encrypt these systems. Have you ever had a system walk out of a clinic? And they said, well, one time we had a desktop walk out of a clinic, but at the same time, it was, we actually found out that it was a tech. They went on vacation and it sat in the back of their car for 3 or 4 days, right? So what that means is somebody could have broken into their car, took their computer out, and had access to a lot of different data. So fast forward to where we're having this conversation, I'm saying just encrypt it, just don't even bother with it. And I'm going back and forth with compliance people, the IT people, and everyone else. And the insurance company comes in 2 months later, 3 months later, after we're about 85% of the way through the rollout. And the insurance company, large international insurance company out of the UK actually, they came back and said that they were going to add a $1 million rider policy on the overall network. It's basically cybersecurity insurance before there was really cybersecurity insurance. They were going to add $1 million rider policy if they could not prove that all the devices were encrypted. And I was sitting in a round table room with 10, 15 people, and the compliance officer looked over to me and mouthed the words, "Thank you." So, I mean, that by itself, like I said, $1 million decision, I didn't see that. But, yeah, so, I mean, that would be one. But it's really hard to prove, like I said, a false negative, or a true negative, I should say, that, you just don't know, because everybody has some level of vulnerability to them. It's just a matter of whether they got hit or not. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Can you hear me by chance?
Yes.
Yes.
Having, certainly worked with technicians in that world for a brief time, and I'm very, I think highly of you, Dallas, and also I'm very impressed with your per hour rate is lower than most rates that I've seen on a per hour basis doing this type of work. And I guess I would equate that, there's a lot of people that can do some type of technology consulting, but what Dallas is doing is, I would equate him to maybe this is a fair analogy, but I equate you more to that specialist surgeon, not the general practitioner, if you're going to a doctor. Is that a fair way of understating your role here, that you have a unique set of skills that isn't necessarily what everybody has?
I like the sound of that. Can you go talk to other people when we're discussing some of my rates? No, very fair assessment. Cybersecurity is a very specialized field. A lot of people think, oh, well, IT and cybersecurity, they're the same thing. Over the past 20-some years, I've walked into business after business where they have a full IT staff, and they should have been hacked 18 ways from Sunday, and just never happened. I've seen some of the worst that walked away thinking there's no way on God's green earth that they should have never been hacked. That just nobody ever targeted them. So yeah, it's very much a specialist.
Well, and I'd also add that, certainly when running the chamber and thinking about the different aspects, risks and vulnerabilities, not just in IT, but overall, I would often get legal advice that would say, you can do everything possible to keep you can do everything possible to reduce your risk, but you can't stop somebody from suing you. And I would say this is a little bit that same analogy. We cannot predict, and we cannot stop. We can, people trying to hack it, and doing any other type of cybersecurity, but to me, I feel like that's a responsibility of us at this board table to do our due diligence to try to reduce the amount of risk, because it will happen again, unfortunately. Are we to the point, I'd like to make a motion, President, is that something I can do, or are we still in discussion?
Ron?
Yeah, I'd just echo, I think if the board's ready to make a motion, I think the thing what we've learned through this process is we're really good at some things, but we're not great at cybersecurity. And Dallas has provided some great assistance throughout our process, and our goal is to continually look to improve our systems, and it's going to be ongoing. This is, I think he indicated, we got a ways to go. And it's just some approaches that we need to take, and down the road, I think he has the expertise, and we can work closely with him, and we have, kind of have an eyeball of what we think it would take. It may not be quite that, maybe, if it's more, we'll let you know. But right now, we're just trying to make you aware that you're going to see some bills going down the road, and it would be for his consultative services.
Are there additional fees other than this here?
Well, there'll be some software, and I don't know, if you want to talk about a little bit on software?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I could talk about this till I'm blue in the face. So if you have questions afterward, ask. So going back to kind of what that brochure is actually after I sold Secor, what I saw is a huge niche in the market. So for about 2 years, I actually developed and created a small business cybersecurity platform. And the reason why it's a platform is it provides a cohesive management of all these different aspects, whether that's threat intelligence feeds, whether that's patch management, whether that's endpoint protection, firewall, vulnerability scans, I could go on and on. So it's looking at all of those from a very holistic standpoint. And, keep in mind that that's where a lot of people get in trouble, is that they say, oh, well, we have a firewall, we have antivirus, we're perfectly fine. Well, not really. What are you doing for patch management? Well, what's patch management? Explaining it to them. What's vulnerability scanning? So you go through all these different things, and so what I essentially came up with, or I should say we came up with, is after going through this entire process and dealing with small businesses for 20-some years, was that people don't want you to say, well, I'm going to sell you this. And then you say, okay, so then that means I'm secure? No, you need this. And it's a never-ending cycle. So instead what you do is you take a platform like this and you go back to, say, the NIST framework, the cybersecurity framework, which is your National Institute of Science and Technology. They have a cybersecurity framework that a lot of government contractors, things like that do. You have the critical security controls, you have the MITRE ATT&CK framework, you have all these different frameworks that you go back to, and that's what that was built off of. So you constantly are going back to it. So, critical security controls number 12 is cybersecurity awareness. We created our own cybersecurity awareness training, and we give it away for free, and it's picked up international customers for us. So it's done very well. So yeah, you just kind of go back and you create this defense in depth approach to where you're not relying on just a firewall or just antivirus or all these things. You're actually putting those in place, and now you're doing continuous security monitoring to where, the attacker doesn't have to just be right one time to get into your system. The attacker has to be right every time. As they're going through your systems, say, in the cyber attack instance, if somebody would have hit one of the servers, it should have sent out probably 20 or 30 different alarms saying, hey, somebody's doing something really weird. But unfortunately, you have to know what normal is to see what abnormal is.
So how big is Treetop? How many employees?
So it's myself, 2 other folks, and we're looking to hire a lot more.
Okay, so if if multiple of your customers get hit, are we still a priority, or where do we fit in there?
Yeah, I mean, every customer is going to be a priority, yeah.
You have an office here in town?
Actually, just bought the Hayes Daily News building, so getting ready to. We have some square footage there.
Good.
Any other questions, discussion? Like I said, it's a learning process, and I feel so good about, you talked about the difference between IT and cybersecurity. And every day, you're waking up thinking about cybersecurity. Our staff was waking up every day thinking about IT as the first step throughout the schools. So I really support it. I've been able to talk to Chris and Ron, how much they have learned from you and through this process. This has been a remedial, at least for me, learning situation just to skim the top of it. Tammy, did you have a motion that you were wanting to make?
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to make the motion to approve consultation services from Treetop Security as proposed.
Okay,
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this motion?
I have one question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking at your website, and you do have a good bit of training on here. Is that included in kind of the contract? Is there additional training that will occur?
No, that's a great question. So, as we were going through that process, that training, there was actual screenshots from it. The other thing you look at is that training is actually free.
Yeah.
100% free. So we have a slide deck, we have videos, but really the whole point of the training was to give it away.
Okay.
And then that's the reason why, actually, I just presented on it the other day. That training has over 10,000 downloads a month.
Okay.
And so that's being presented in places like Gambia, India, Fiji, Philippines, all over the world.
Does that mean that, does it come with like a structure to fan it out to our organizational members, is I guess kind of what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the organization. So this is a very low, well, I should say a higher friction, low cost. There are some very high cost, low friction alternatives available. This is probably the first step. A lot of people never go past this step, just to be quite honest with you. And this is not, we don't have additional training that we try to tack on either.
We do have, just to kind of follow up our plan going forward, and a piece of even renewal for all of our insurance package, which includes the P&C, but the cyber insurance specifically, we have to mix in cybersecurity training into our annual trainings that everybody has to have, bloodborne pathogens, things like that. So we will use this going forward, along with using Dallas as a way to help us do phishing
assessments, yeah. And maybe that might have been what you were asking. So you do at least quarterly phishing assessments. That's what we do for a lot of our banks and other customers already.
Yeah. Okay.
I appreciate that we have a business and expertise here in our community, and we're able to support them. So that's very important.
I agree. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agreement between Treetop Security here in Hayes for cybersecurity, hourly rate of $100, estimated hours up to 400 hours annually, and that is just an estimate. It may need to be changed at a later date. All in favor, please vote by aye. Aye. All against, vote nay. Approved 7-0. Thank you very much.
And if anyone ever has questions, reach out. I mean, shoot me an email, do whatever you want to do. If you have questions and I can't answer it, shouldn't be doing this.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I remember when I was at school.
Okay, 6.2, driver's education car bid. Ron?
Yeah, if you remember last month or last meeting, we talked a little bit about this in terms of, we've seen some excess revenue. Part of that is because with driver's ed, we've seen an increase in number of kids who have been participating lately, as well as our reimbursement rate has been up the last couple of years. And so we have some excess revenue that we want to spend down. And so put together some a bid spec for a driver's ed car. This will serve primarily as our driver's ed car, but when not in use, it will become part of our transportation fleet. So we have some bids. So we had 6 bids, and our recommendation is for the 2021 Equinox from Auto World for $31,995.
Hey, Ron, I have a question. This is Tammy. When you say the phrase, this is probably me showing my ignorance, but can you explain the spend down, what that means in terms of the overall budget? And I'm assuming something, and I'm not sure if I'm assuming correctly, but am I assuming that that money can't be transferred to another budget item? Can you explain that?
You can't transfer out of driver's ed. So when we put money in, whether it's fees or general fund transfer or anything like that, once it's in driver's ed, it has to be spent for driver's ed expenses. And like Mr. Wilson said, with the increased participation, but also if you go back a handful of years, when you renew your driver's license, there's a piece of that by statute goes to fund driver's ed programs across the state based on the per kid number. Well, a few years ago, that was cut down to basically nothing. Over the last few years, that reimbursement rate has come back basically to what the statutory rate was supposed to be in the beginning, and therefore, like we've had conversations in the last couple of years of reducing fees. But when you have increased state, basically it led to exactly what you're saying, Tammy, some money left in the bank, and so now we've got an opportunity to do something for the program for the next, 10 years, foreseeable future, by purchasing a car to have as a driver's ed car. But no, you can't transfer that money anywhere else. It has to be spent for the purpose that it was put in.
Chris, what percentage is going to be paid for the driver's ed?
We do 50-50. That's really just the easiest way to do it. So half of it would come from capital outlay, our transportation line item that we use to replace fleet vehicles anyway, and then the other half would come from driver's ed, so that during summertime driver's ed time, the car is dedicated to driver's ed, but then during the rest of the year it can be used as for.
Was the Equinox vehicle, that size of vehicles, what the transportation requested? Because usually our driver's ed don't use that big of vehicles.
Yeah, standard car, not an SUV.
Yeah, it was actually, it was what driver's ed, really what they were looking for, something like that specifically, because of a piece of like this car would be hauling around and storing the signs on top and the extra brake equipment, so it was easier to haul around by having the hatch back. So it fits the needs of what driver's ed was needing, not only for driving with the kids, but then also for kind of the off-season driver's ed hauling their equipment around.
Okay, Ron, your recommendation is to go with the Auto World bid on the Equinox for $31,995?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I move that we accept the bid.
I second. Any other discussion? We have a bid for Auto World for the 2021 Equinox for $31,995 to be split between driver's ed and the transportation department here at USD 49. If you vote to approve, vote aye.
Aye.
Nay for voting against. 7-0 approved. 6.3, student school fees.
Yeah, just an opportunity to get in front of the board here and talk a little bit about school fees and recommendations for the next school year. We've looked at all of our fees that we assess, starting with our textbook materials fee. We're recommending that stay the same as $90 as what it has been the last 2 years. The technology repair fee, of course, That is a fee for as devices get broke or need repaired. It's in a sense our insurance to help us cover some of those costs. We're recommending that stay the same at $25 for both middle school and high school. The student ID fee, we're recommending that we decrease that from the $12 for middle school, $16 for high school to just a $5 cost. We feel like we'll be able to manage that in terms of those, of course, printing those cards, and that's the access for students to get into events, and they use it as ID for other things, but also just sometimes they get lost and we have to replace them, so there's some costs that come with that. And we feel like the $5 helps us continue to take care of that. Our student activity fee, that's a fee for both middle school and high school only. We're recommending those stay at $50. That is a fee that covers a lot of activities, and I've shared that in your board packet, a lot of those different kinds of things, such as student recognition, teacher appreciation, guest speakers, funding school projects for student competitions, probably even chess club falls in that, robotics club, all school assemblies, it goes on and on. Science Olympiad, Scholars Bowl, things like that. And that's what the activity fee, and we're recommending that stay at $50. Of course, we have the exploratory tech fee, and that's only for seventh grade. Of course, I would tell you, it costs way more than $15 for the number of projects they do, but it does help with some of the cost. And of course, the class fee cost, which is only the high school, and that's at $15.
And the student activity fee pays a lot of that to go along with that.
Exactly, yeah, fill in those extra gaps.
Right.
We're recommending that we discontinue the summer weights. I think that was a fee that was started back when things were a little lean, and just as a way to cover some of that additional summer supervision and sponsorship of the weight room, we feel like we can handle that now on our own. There'd be no reason to charge for summer weights. And of course, we've talked about driver's ed, that we've seen a little bit of an increase in revenue due to the number of kids participating. We anticipate that we'll have a high number this year, or it looks like we're having a high number this year. And so once again, we felt like we could reduce those fees by $50 for both in-district and out-of-district. So that's a little bit of our recommendation. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Ron, do we need to approve these tonight, or is it just a discussion?
It's not necessarily time sensitive.
All right.
This is a discussion,
right.
And you also see our recommendations.
Okay.
Okay. Can I ask, please, first, what means there are for families to appeal paying these full fees? $195 for enrollment of a single student at the high school is,
Yep.
too much for some families.
Yeah.
So can you talk to that?
Well, we do. If you're approved for free lunches, fees are waived.
Okay.
And last year, we did make that change. If you are approved for reduced lunches, we ask for 50% of the fee cost. So as far as if you don't qualify for any kind of lunch assistance, I mean, I don't really know. We do work with families. We allow families to make payments. We do not expect all the money, and as long as they're making an attempt to pay throughout the school year, we're perfectly fine with that. So we do work with families.
But Ron, the problem there, and I'm speaking from my past history, when I was as a single dad with low income coming in, which wasn't low enough for free lunches and everything, multiple kids, if you have 3 kids in high school, that's over $555. Even making a payment plan through the year, that's a hardship.
Yeah, and if you add in the fact that one of them is probably going to be in driver's ed that year, and these are shockingly high fees for families. Generally, I came from a rural community, and the fee there was less than $50. I was a single mother. I have only been married for 2 years, and enrollment here has been a burden for me.
So the thing is, we talk about the bond, how approving that's going to bring people in because we have good schools, but the other deterrent has always been the high cost, like she's saying. When you move from anywhere to Hayes, it seems very high.
The thing I would tell you is that I'm not going to say we're low by any means in comparison to other districts, 5A districts. I would say we're comparable to other 5A districts in terms of fee assessment. I mean,
How many dollars are we talking this, what's the total
the total dollars,
that this would bring in?
So if we're looking at like the $90 textbook fee.
Next year's enrollment, how much money?
Next year's enrollment, well, I'll tell you what we brought in year-to-date this year, because this is the first year that we did the cut the fees in half for the reduced lunch. So on the $90 textbook fee, we generated to this point $177,000. And again, all of that is then going back to, back to classroom, student materials, activities, things like that.
Ron or Shanna, the textbook material fee, can you explain a little bit of what that's used for?
Well, basically, as it says, for any type of print and/or digital curriculum instructional materials for K-12 across all content areas, so whether that's a consumable, whether that's a subscription, so really a lot, because of the technology we have, it's not all print but digital, and we lived in a world, gosh, I don't know, 2017 was the last time we did the no fund warrant. I mean, we had no textbook fund. Actually, 2013, no fund warrant, which was not recommended as a practice to do, so we had made a decision as a district to not pursue that any longer. So we've been building a healthy balance for textbook material fee, which is anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000. So as you see, we have most recently the largest in 2016, nearly $200,000 for K-5 ELA. So as we look at Tier 1 curriculum with MTSS and having fidelity and how it's aligned to standards, I included some upcoming as schedule of possible curriculum reviews. And so keeping a healthy balance in there is going to be important for what's coming up.
So what is our next adoption? I skimmed through there.
We have a math subject area committee working, this year they have been working. K-5 will extend what they're using currently because they're going through letters and the timing wasn't right. And the data says that if we don't have a huge need there. Middle school and high school, I will bring to you a recommendation. They're doing some piloting, and so that will be next meeting or the one after. And then we do know with the dyslexia initiative, the foundational skills for ELA for K-3, we're looking at a program, and I'll bring you a recommendation. They've been doing some piloting, and so that subject area committee has a recommendation. So that's what we will be looking for next year. And then the year after that, if we do 1 year extension for K-Math, we'll look at math. We renewed social studies last year for 2 years, so we'll need to look at that. And then July 2024, possibly, we could look at K-12 ELA. So those are just, when they would come up, if we have a budget, what our need is, that's just the schedule that's out there.
We've had some cash carryovers in that line item for several years, right? And so we've almost doubled and tripled that line item. So many of our families have already paid into and have put money into that account already. So it would be nice if we could return the favor and reduce that, especially that
base
textbook fee.
That base fee is just so.
I mean, that's K-12, right? They all pay that $90.
Right.
Yeah, and over this little bit of history, I mean, when I first started here, it was 0, and then went up to 15, and then went up to 30, then we went back down to 0 for a few years, and then we had some lean years there that we were going to add because we didn't have kindergarten, so we were going to add a $500 fee to that, and then during our board meeting, we said, oh, let's just pay $150 for every kid every year, and it hasn't changed. Well, now it's dropped down a little bit, now it's from 150 down to 90.
That's when we went to all-day kindergarten too, wasn't it?
Well, it was before that, and then that's another thing, we've got that for elementary that we didn't have before. We got that half-day funding for all elementary kids that we didn't have, that the state has provided, but we still have the same fee. So it's about time that we drop that down. We're asking parents to possible bond, and we're going to have to, especially, those are the ones that are going to be paying, the ones that have properties, so we ought to be able to help them.
But like what Ken's talking about, that's just these fees. You tack on the lunch ticket and everything else.
That's gonna be new.
Our bill was over $1,000.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, when my oldest was a senior, it was right at $1,000. That's not including lunches fully.
Those lunches, yeah.
And then, I don't know how your kids are, but mine wanted a yearbook. And so there was, I mean, there's costs that we have as parents, get them enrolled and, even paying out throughout the year.
Yeah.
It was hard.
I mean, I got another request for another $60 for a woodworking class. Now, I mean, I'm fine to pay for supplies. This is totally what I signed up for, but it's also, like, he's been enrolled in that class all year, and that wasn't on the list in the beginning. And then, so then that's $155.
Yeah, we're not assessing. Yeah, we're not.
And I get a $255. I want him to have these things. I want everyone to have these things. And I think we need to figure out how we can make sure that the family who can't afford a surprise $60 also has that.
Sure. And I know there's situations that we work with families, it's not that we don't do that. I mean,
On the summer weights, are we going to pay that now? We're going to pay their salaries instead of, they pay the 35.
Be a supplemental.
yeah, well,
But that's an elective, right?
We, Ron,
The district.
is that, are you referring to the foundation too?
No.
Or is the foundation another resource?
You mean when you say we have ways to help families, Tammy?
Yes, yeah.
yeah, that would be through some of those means. We have several different, I think there have been requests to the foundation, I believe,
Yeah, there is. I know there is.
for assistance.
So another thing I want to ask, like people like Kurt who have 100 kids, at certain numbers, do you assist them with that at all, or?
Not
I'm
presently.
close, right?
Yeah, we're off one.
Multiples.
Multiple
That makes
benefits,
sense.
yeah, more than
Like, yeah.
3 or whatever, yeah.
But anyway, now, back to the summer weights, so we're going to pay, instead of charging 35, we're going to pay that
Yeah,
for those sponsors.
yes.
So, okay.
Why?
What, so what that had turned into, there were some, it doesn't cover, I think when it was put in, I think it was supposed to be offsetting for like the energy cost or something, I'm not sure.
I think that's what, back when it first came, that's what they agreed to do it for.
Yeah.
The coaches did.
And that over the course of time, it's not covering the cost, like what we're generating in that is one that it's almost a convenience kind of thing, it's not worth, what we're getting in, it isn't covering the cost, isn't covering the electricity.
It's not covering the cost of collecting it, is
Right,
what you're
exactly.
saying.
Yeah, right. And it, as you were saying, it potentially deters some kids from being engaged in stuff in the summer too. And so it was relatively easy to say, well, it's not covering the cost of what we're doing anyway, there's no reason to mess with it.
Okay.
And is that, how many week program is that, for a month or
It's
5
between,
weeks?
it's 4 days a week between, depending on how the summer lays out, 6 to 8 weeks. 8 would be long, usually 6 or 7 weeks usually.
Ron, when do we need a when will you bring a final
This is really
recommendation?
for enrollment purposes, and enrollment is not till August, so we've got plenty of time to discuss this and look at maybe some possible ways. I think the thing is you always have to consider is that it is easy to reduce when you know you have revenue. It is very difficult when you have to raise because you need revenue. I was at a legislative session and that was one of the questions. We got $1.5 billion in Kansas cash reserves, Why are we not cutting some things? And that's what I heard from legislators. Well, we've been in those situations before. We're just gonna sit tight and see where this goes. And so, because once again, it's real easy to cut, but it's also extremely tough to suddenly say, this isn't working. And I think what Shannon talked about, no fund warrants. You have to understand, this district was in that situation many years ago. We're not even close to that. We're in a very good situation. You just have to be very careful. It is, I totally have so much empathy because families, it is an expensive time. You know, I wish there were easier ways to make this happen, but, you know, funding at the state level, yeah, if we see some increases, I think that maybe we're moving in the right direction. We've had about 4 years now of some increase in funding, and that's why you're starting to see some of those revenues build up. However, we don't know where next year is happening. You know, we were only secured because of that Gannon lawsuit, and the state Supreme Court said you had to fund schools at a certain level. If the state legislature changes course and does not fund, we'll start cutting into those revenues really fast.
Are there any districts that use a sliding scale fee?
I'm sure I'm absolutely sure there are. I don't know that, but I'm sure there are districts that do some creative things. I don't really know what they are. I mean, I have some cost. You asked about other districts. Okay, so you know, there's districts that charge $100 for a textbook fee, 5A districts, and then there's some that charge as low as, I think the lowest I see is Pittsburgh charges 25, but most of them are 55 or higher for textbook fees. So most districts are charging a textbook fee. But then what's also unique is they also charge a fee. You know, we don't, I see, you know, you talk about woods. We don't actually charge a woods fee, but I think there's a project cost. So once your child decides to do a certain project, there's a cost that comes with that, and that's expected.
But it also depends on, that project depends on if they pick walnut, oak, or mahogany. So
I had no idea what it was for.
And kids don't either. I mean, I'm sure they don't. But, I mean, when I look at this fee schedule, there are things where they're charging for band instruments.
Yeah, yeah.
Individual fees, we don't do that. I see they're charging for laundry, for athletics. I mean, it's just a whole gamut of fees that can be assessed, and we can look at different ways, but you have to understand there's still costs that we have to cover, and I think the only thing I would say is just please understand we have to be somewhat careful in how we approach this.
Ron, if we put this back on the agenda to vote on in May, would that be early enough?
Yes.
And between now and then, get us that information that you're talking about, like what the other districts are charging, and
I realize also that our budget for next year has been set, right? Our budget for the 22-23 year has already been...
Not approved. It's not been approved by the legislature.
Okay.
That is still, hopefully, will be finalized when they reconvene April 25th or so.
So we'd know by May.
Should know by May, you know, what our budget. And I'm assuming that we will get what has been told we are going to get. I have not heard anything that would make me feel that we're going to see any cuts.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's move it to May.
Yeah.
Let's move it to May and get us as much information as we can. And I hear the board talking about looking at what we need to do on these fees to help the families, and especially with multiple kids in the district. Okay, 6.4, we have we put this on the agenda tonight to talk about the policy of board agenda requests made during the meeting. I'll just go here, just hit, the board shall adopt an agenda at the beginning of each meeting. The superintendent shall distribute background materials concerning agenda items to all board members prior to each meeting, which then shall be referred to as the annotated agenda. The board agenda shall be compiled by the superintendent in cooperation with the board president. Other board members may request items to be placed on the agenda. Agenda requests should be submitted 7 days prior to any regular board meeting. The agenda may include a period of time when the public may speak to the board, that we have the public comment. And I'll let you look through the rest of it. Is there questions, discussion about the board policy? Alan, you'd requested this be a agenda item.
Yes, it was just removed from the agenda, and didn't notice it wasn't on the agenda last meeting, so I asked if it put back on. This is an item that I can remember back 30-plus years. It's always been on the agenda, to have the opportunity for the board, a time when the board knows if there's something they want to comment about a school, an event, that is the time that they can do it. It's an opportunity for discussion. They would say, hey, I went to the fun night at Roosevelt, and they did an awesome job. Things like that I remember past that board members have commented on. You take that discussion item out and not a place for it. There's sometimes board members do that. It says in here on the agenda, it says, other board members may request items be placed on the agenda. Doesn't say when, doesn't say how. If they do it during the time 2 weeks before, it's better than 7 days before anyway. Gives the opportunity for administration to do it. So I don't understand why it was taken off, because it just gives an opportunity for the board to add and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, can we look at it, research it, and then if they forgot or they do it 7 days before. That's 2 weeks before. And so I don't understand why it was taken off, and at least why we didn't discuss it before it was taken off. That's my opinion.
Well, and if I may interject, I understand Mike Walker actually started that during his presidency, and he arbitrarily put a section, what did we call it, the seventh section in our agenda as just an open board request. But one of the first meetings that the new board members have, I think it was Kurt Viner was asking about it, wondering how some of this came about, and there's been some other discussion, and I guess since it was a board president that put it on, I went ahead and I took it off because I really liked following the actual policy, where it does say agenda requests should be submitted 7 days prior. That doesn't necessarily need to be email, but it also doesn't have to be on the board agenda. And to me, when we're having meetings that have been lasting 3 hours, I guess that's part of the role of a president, is to try to keep the meeting as efficient as possible. So that was my reason for removing it, because it was arbitrarily put on by another board member, not a board decision. It was Mike. So that's just to explain. If this board, though, if everybody wants that put back on and they vote to put it on, we can. But we have a process in place, and to me, why add more time to a meeting that we don't need?
Alan, and I understand where you're going with agenda requests like this one, talking about a procedure. But when you mention talking about the middle school citizenship day, and you can make that comment without making an agenda item. I know I've made a lot of those. When Ron gets done with his superintendent's report, we talk about, hey, the wrestling team did a great job. We want to thank them, or the different schools. I know I'd like to hear more of that go on. We've had previous boards that just took the opportunity to talk about different people that need to be recognized in the school district. So I don't think you need an agenda item to do that.
I think you can go back and look at the past agendas, and you can see that's been on the way past Mike Walker. So it's just been part of that. And you go to other boards, city commission, library board, all kinds, they have that, and an opportunity, because otherwise, it's controlling the narrative.
Okay.
That's part of it. We want to control the narrative. That gives the opportunity for the board to do their work and do it in front of the public, and anybody can see and bring it up. Something that's on their mind. Plus, it's 2 weeks before, not just 7 days.
The only thing I want to interject on that, and I've had the opportunity to work with the board president this year as vice president and Ron during the agenda requests. If we have one board member make 3 agenda requests, a couple board members make other agenda requests, are you saying that every agenda request that's made by every board member needs to be on the next agenda?
No.
Okay.
I'm just saying that
You
to
leave
have that
it-
opportunity
you
like we've
leave-
had for decades.
You leave that up to the president and the superintendent.
But also, if you have a place where people can make board agenda requests, we all know what their other people's ideas are and can absorb them and dialogue with them before they come to the next meeting. So, I had no idea that one didn't make it or what have you, but I would sure like if we can make our request out in open and public, it's transparent, everybody heard it, everybody knows where it was driven from and why we're asking for it. Whereas if it's an email, it's one-on-one correspondence, and if you put them on or you don't put them on, nobody knows unless you bring it up. And if it's done out in the open, everybody knows.
Well, Kurt, and I see your point of view. I think that's absolutely right, but the other side of that is, the problem is that we tend to, when we say we want something out in public, we go ahead and expound instead of say, hey, let's add this to the agenda, and that's a time killer, but at the same time, I see what you're saying, and I can see why we need to have it out there.
Well, if I make an agenda request for whatever, then that's duly noted. I don't think you lead on for discussion. Discussion's down the road.
Well, I'm talking about what's actually happened, is it's led to some...
I know, we'll cut the discussion out as board president and say, I recognize your request and I will consider it and move on. But I think it's a lot better if it's done out in the open.
Yeah,
I like Kurt's idea. If somebody's making a request, they make the request but do not discuss it, their view at that time.
Because that gives you 2 weeks to think about what your thoughts about what board member so-and-so brought out. But without the open discussion, I don't have time to think about what was going to be until Friday. It came on the request. I'd like to ponder stuff for longer if I have an opportunity.
Makes sense.
I would just ask, because when comments are made that say that somebody's controlling a narrative, it makes me, as the person working with the staff member, that's one reason why I brought in the vice president throughout the whole time, because I feel like I'm put in this defensive mode. And I guess I want it clear, if we change the way we move forward, I'm in support of that, and I'm in support of communication. However, we've not done just requests for agenda. When we had that time during meetings, there was a lot of time spent on trying to position the reason why one wanted an agenda item added. But there's several things that I'm hearing, and it's back to, if somebody makes a request, it's just that. It is a request to be considered. And then, and so I think that I feel like I've been defending decisions on what has gone into a board agenda as if I'm trying to control a narrative. So my request of this board is this. If indeed we put a section on the overall agenda that's always to discuss the future agenda requests, then we monitor each other in requests only, don't grandstand and try to put your support there, but then let's change the policy. The way the policy is written, then let's put it in there. Let's make it to where, because I'm following policy right now, and I do not appreciate the comments that indicate that those are not being done in the manner that it is. So can we, I would say at this point, we need to wordsmith the school board operation code BCBD. Put it in there, so. proceed.
Okay, if we're looking, Mr. Jeter, if we're looking at changing the policy, we have to get a proposed policy and have to have a first read and a second read, right? On that.
And I believe this was what KSB, this is probably almost word for word for what they have in there, that they recommend for their, but we could check it out and make sure. But I don't see, Mrs. Wellbrock, can you explain how the change or what we did went against board policy?
No, you have often said I'm not following policy here, Alan. So either way may have been following policy, but it's still back to the discretion of, so it was a board president that put that section on to have open discussion during an agenda or during an open meeting, and it was a board president that took it off. That's it. So I'm not saying any policy has been broken. That's what I'm trying to explain to you, that no policy has been broken.
Well, no, you said that you're following policy. Well, I disagree.
I am following policy. Can you tell me where
I said the
am not following
agenda,
policy, Alan?
what we did before.
Black and white.
What we did before and what we're doing now, I didn't say it's not following policy. By doing it the way, it still follows policy. It says that other board members may request items to be placed on the agenda. It doesn't say when or how it could be done. And I'm saying that we might as well have it 2 weeks before than 7 days before, just to be prepared. And I would disagree that Mike Walker.
That's a different request, Alan. You've made it sound like though me removing that open part during a meeting was violating policy, and that's what I don't appreciate, is that insinuation that I am not.
No, I just said that I wish it would have been.
I am defensive, but you put me in that position of always having to defend actions that are clearly stated. Now, I have no problem putting it back in, but I also want to ask you, Alan, to not have to go into all the reasonings that why you want something on the agenda. You make the request and then you respect the decisions to put it on the agenda or not.
And I would ask that you respect our board.
Reflects.
I would ask that you respect our board and when you want to make changes, open it up and ask for discussion.
Okay, as acting president, what I'm going to request as we look at the agenda for next time.
Mr. President, I move that we add this item back on like we've had for decades and just have that opportunity for us to have discussion.
I just looked at some meetings from 2019, and this was not on the agenda for the 2019 meetings. So that is just, let's just be straight here. If you're going to ask for this to be added, that's fine. But please, let's respect previous boards' work as well. That included you, and also respect our own time.
If you change it, just
If we need to adapt, I think it's appropriate maybe at this point to move that we put BCBD for review in our future meetings to address or allow for this inclusion in a regular agenda request, or, and also perhaps adapt some of the advanced language in order to accommodate technical glitches that have happened a couple of times, so that we are being very consistent and transparent.
And respectful.
Okay.
And respectful of our staff.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I don't know,
I have a motion.
Lori?
What's the motion?
Yeah, got a little wordy.
To put, I am, just at this point, I need a motion if we're going to move, or just leave it as a discussion item tonight.
I move that we consider adding the board agenda request on the agenda for each board meeting. And if that has to take 2 readings, then become
No,
board policy.
we're not changing,
Not
talking
just
about
to
changing
add-
policy.
yeah.
We're just
Right.
making a motion.
I think it needs to be discussed.
Okay. I have a motion by Kurt to, would you want to restate that?
We move the board agenda request to be discussed at the future meeting.
Okay.
And we need to then make a decision.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, vote aye.
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 All against, nay.
But is that the motion he made that's written up there?
Yeah.
Or do you just want to discuss it?
We just want to discuss it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were.
Yeah.
Right. That's what he. Okay, so the motion is approved. Discuss this at the,
It's not adding, it's to discuss.
yeah, at a further board meeting. Okay, tonight, Ron, do we have an executive session?
Yeah, and that would be for personnel matters.
Okay, let me,
Personnel.
a little bit different. We have an executive session that we will be going into at this time. How long?
I'd say 15 minutes, and
For
then,
15 minutes. Will that take place here in the
Yes.
boardroom?
Yes.
So we have an executive session, motion to go into executive session for personnel matters for non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy and interests of identifiable individuals. Do I have that motion?
Also move
Oh,
to
Ron,
discuss,
superintendent, assistant superintendents, and legal counsel for a
Okay.
time of 15 minutes.
Starting after a 5-minute break.
We will be starting that at 8:05 and coming back into public session at 8:20.
Mr. President,
Yes,
and we will have action after.
we have action after the executive session.
can I so move?
So moved. Second,
Seconded.
all approved, vote aye.
Aye.
All against, nay. Approved 7-0. We will be going into executive session with a few minutes break and coming back into open session at 8:20.
Yeah. Give Kurt.
Okay, we're now
He's down to
moving into executive session.
so you got a break.
I didn't see a vote.
Thank you. wait a minute, what if I do that without my touch screen? So that's more effective. You can scroll back.
It's kinda hard to know.
Like, go through it.
Yep, so anyway,
For you.
Yeah.
Once you hold it down.
let's roll. Probably still got stuff to do.
Nothing different, nothing different at all. Another report you to
Let's see, I've been texting.
It's a silly.
I'm so sorry.
It's 20 after, I'd like to call us back into open session. We are down to 7.3 personnel transactions. Do I have a motion to approve?
I would move to approve the personnel transactions as presented.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. If you vote for approving the personnel transaction, vote aye. Aye. Against, vote nay. 7-0 on personnel transactions. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I move that we adjourn. Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Vote aye, approve. Aye. Nay, disapprove. We are adjourned.